Sabelina, Sorceress Spy. Chapter 1. In the town of Pantalan. Words and magic were in the beginning one and the same thing. Quoted from Sigmund Freud. This is a story about the human heart, but this is not a love story. The human heart is not all about love. Deep within this throbbing cocoon of muscle, mold, and mass lies the secret which holds the darkest mystery of who we truly are and why we are who we are. If you like to know how the story goes, then close your eyes, child, and start listening to your own heart. In a time when gods were mountains and mountains were gods, there lived a young, enchanting woman, a sorceress in disguise, whose own heart was darkness in the flesh. A darkness which was as bewitching as it, too, was bedeviled. And although the heart of this peculiar creature throbbed with darkness, first absorbed by her senses as a mortal from the mysterious circumstances of her birth, then coursed through her veins like her own blood and the blood of her still unrevealed ascendants. In good time it flowed into the vena cava of her heart's cocoon. Yes, into the vena cava, where its two chambers, the superior and the inferior, carried this asphyxiated absence of light across her heart's many winding passages. The superior being in charge of the enchanting creature's sense of theurgy, and the inferior overseeing the young woman's sense of mortality. On and on her darkness echoed through the many winding passages until it reached the atriums. There it would be transformed at last no longer as darkness, but now as her own spiritus lucis. Her own breath of light. Oh, would this metamorphosis mean then that such a young, enchanting woman whose own heart was darkness in the flesh be actually capable of true love as a mortal, so long that she endured light the same way she struggled to hold on to her own life? How would her breath of light hold on to her words of love and life, truth and freedom, peace and harmony, as a mortal, when at that time the gods led by himself the native lord of magic Hamista wielded such invincible and omnipresent influence of unparalleled sorcery? Using the homegrown forms of Barang, Kulam, Bighani, and Encanto over the entire Palawan island itself? How could she turn away from her own mana? Not only the mana which readily meant her inheritance, but the mana which, according to Father Roberto himself, her foster father, meant a supernatural force in a person, a place, an object, or an event. Would this be, in her love time, the sempiternal struggle she had to overwhelm as well as overcome as such a strangely bewitching yet bedeviled young woman? The contest between the heart of darkness she was seemingly born with and the breath of light she was so determined to enjoy and employ? And would this phenomenon be just peculiar to her? To her yet undetermined kind? Or to all humans, in general? En passant, what was the name of this young and charmingly cruel, or cruelly charming, sorceress laden with such self-questionings, and who lived in a time when gods were mountains and mountains were gods? Indeed, who was she? Her name was Isabella Sabelman Levi. Left on the cold limestone steps of the old chapel on the flat valley floor where the whole town of Pantalan was located. More than a stone's throw away from the foot of a hill overlooking a slice of the sea of light which swirled and spin-drifted waves and winds on the far southern side of the Palawan island, and with a December's monsoon blitzing the small town that terrible night. The wail of the wave must have sounded like a stray kitten's frail yet utterly disquieting whimper of a mule for dear life. Good thing Father Roberto Aquino, the then young, active, and newly designated parish priest of the Cathedral of Pantalan situated beside the chapel and in front of the old town plaza, which, in turn, was built right across the middle of the valley floor's solid ground on the south-southeastern side of the island, had completely forgotten to lock down his bedroom window directly overlooking the crumbling and verily exposed chapel steps, much to his own dismay if one would only listen to the neophyte sermoner's version of what had happened. For when the monsoon began that fateful December evening, the good priest had already rode his bed early and stroked the beads of his rosary to an amenable state of dreaming, which, to Father Roberto's own testimony, of course, would have been something close to a vision. as attested by his own palpable words outside the pulpit whenever the good father felt the need to retell the story to all those curious, and gossipy, of heart and mind, he would recount to them the surreal experience. How he envisioned himself drifting alone on some sort of a raft with neither oar to navigate his way on the waters of an eerily calm ocean, nor provisions to satiate his thirst and hunger during this nightmarish voyage to nowhere elseness. But whether it was a fantastic vision or a simple dream, suffice to say that the latter part of it saw the good priest being marooned on an island and being met by a voice. When asked by him the young priest whose voice was it and from where did it emanate, the voice explained that it was the call of Father Roberto's own imagination. The envisioned act of the imagination as recalled by Father Roberto allegedly rang out one theme in infinite loop. Today is a picture of tomorrow taken yesterday. Accept the darkness only as the light's own shadow. This is the truth. Accept the darkness. Of course, good Father Roberto left out a word or two in his narrative and merely focused his theme on one single word, acceptance. But, Father, an old woman parishioner once asked the priest in the middle of his story retelling, shouldn't you have notified the DSWD about it? Or maybe even your bishop? Manning, I understand where you're coming from. And I am currently taking steps to do what has to be done about the child in the eyes of God and in the eyes of man. I have already taken the initial steps in looking for the child's real parents. But the reality here in Pantalan is, the shepherd of the Catholic flock sighed, many things take a longer time to be processed here than if we were in the capital. He was referring to Puerto Princesa, the premium city of Palawan. Compared to Porto, as the locals called the capital, Pantalan was a little more than 3% of its size, the third-class municipality having a land area of 84.95 square kilometers. Pantalan was divided into two districts, San Agustin and Fisheries. The local councils of both districts each passed a resolution to create just one barangay in their respective areas of jurisdiction. Juxtaposed with the far seaside southern districts which were more densely populated yet grossly lacking of public funds for their development, the district of Cabur being an ideal illustration, the two barangays of San Agustin and Fisheries became the major social center of the entire island. Though sparse of local residents, yet brimming with money from the coffers of its local government. Taken side by side, however, historical timeline should show that progress was just as slow in and out of the town of Pantalan, thus, becoming the subject of many theses on how graft and corruption in public office could, indeed, be distrustfully endemic. Even the good priest shuddered at the thought of the child being exploited by those who would readily trade the baby's life for a few silver coin pieces. Anyway, the priest would continue with his recounting to the aforementioned parishioner of what had happened, not so much by the tone and the repetition, but rather by the message. Father Roberto was understandably disturbed from the depths of his snooze, and quickly arose from his bed that night, which was already in a violent state of midstorm. Yet, the story went, as he struggled to put the lock back on the aforementioned bedroom window, he heard the mule. A faint whimpering mule. And when he looked down to see where it came from, he colorfully remembered right away his own dream of being stranded with neither oar nor provisions, for that was exactly what he saw in his mind when he looked at the abandoned baby inside a fruit basket assembled as a crib and stuffed in the right places with the warmest of wool and blanket to protect the waif from the darkest forces of Mother Nature. A mysterious infancy which struggled to survive against such horrible desertion of its deliverers to this world. Whether these deliverers be gods, or humans, or something else different from these two entirely. Thus, the fostering of the abandoned child was left to the chief guardian of the Church of Pantalan. Father Roberto had the mind and the heart, of course, to delegate a matter he would have great trouble making heads or tails of with his Manang Friday, Nene Lenny. Nene Lenny's family was a middle-income one. She was the second of 5 children. Maria Leonora Lenny Segovia, 45, chose not to marry anymore after a slew of suitors went in and out of her life for a good part of her middle age. Suffice to say that, after some time of being led into the desert of the Middle East where she worked as a domestic helper, she was eventually tempted by the devil. The woman, however, would not have the devil have its way on her. So she cast the devil out. Then, after 40 days in the desert, she journeyed back to her hometown Pantalan and rejoined society as if nothing life-changing had happened to her. People talked, of course, about what really happened to Nene Lenny when she was abroad as an OFW. How she became more reclusive, and more focused to being a devotee of Mama Mary and a volunteer for the various charity projects of the church. Yes, people talked about her and Father Roberto. People. Those same people curious and gossipy of heart and mind who would listen to the good priest for hours, as if they were more intent on re-experiencing the pastor's memories rather than gush over the physical features of the young man. For the good priest was moderately handsome and well-built, his face angelique, with deep-set brown eyes that could look through anyone's soul, it seemed. And Father Roberto's voice. It was a voice that made the pulpit tremble during his weekly Sunday sermon. Now back to Nene Lenny. Her family, however, did not notice anything worthwhile to notice upon Nene Lenny's return. They were simply happy she was home again, to be reunited with her younger sister widowed years ago, and who bore 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. No, Nene Lenny's family did not notice any change at all, except for her sudden devotion to Mama Mary, the Blessed Virgin, and her active volunteerism to the works of charity by the church. And, of course, her contempt for the ancestral natives of the island, the Tagbanuas. So when Father Roberto needed someone who would be willing to temporarily take care of the baby left in front of the chapel door in the middle of a storm, Nene Lenny was the first in a rather long queue of the younger and single moth earlings who volunteered herself. Especially so that she admired the work of the new pastor who initiated some progressive changes to his parish. It should be noted that Nene Lenny had no idea that Father Roberto came from a local family of Baba'i lands. Although, how she had reacted with the knowledge of such information could not be ascertained at all at this time. And, Father, it would be best to take her home with me. My sister Mariana, as well as my nieces and nephews, would be more than willing to have another member added to our family. The more, the merrier, Father. The priest was thankful to have an angel help him out in his personal mission to keep the child. If, indeed, that would be the result that would be in accordance with the will of the Almighty. Excellent suggestion, Nene Lenny. Oh, nay, the Lord would repay you for your good deeds. And, Father, maybe I'm just thinking ahead, but what would we name her? Isabella. Nene Lenny, who was a bit heavy for her height and age index, smiled, revealing the prominence of her fully rounded cheeks. That's a nice name, Father. Isabella. Isabella. And? Man Levi, the priest half expected his Manang Friday's question. Man Levi is the surname of my great-great-grandfather, maternal side. Isabella Man Levi. Nene Lenny relished the full name with her tongue. Isabella. Isabella. But the woman had one more thing in her mind as she cradled baby Isabella in her arms. Father. Yes, nay. Aren't you afraid? Afraid of what, nay? What other people would say? About you and me and the baby? The good priest sighed, then looked deep into the woman's eyes and said, Psalm 101, verse 5, Whoever slanders his neighbor secretly, I will destroy. Whoever has a haughty look and an arrogant heart will not endure. The devil breathes out lies and spreads strife.